Welcome to another edition of mindfitpodcast. My name is Robert Aceves, and I'm here with Neil Babins. How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good, considering that this whole week has been very busy for me. I've had a lot of clients, like I was telling you earlier, this week, and doing a lot of work with my new YouTube channel, a couple other podcasts that I do in Spanish, and it's just been crazy. But I'm still alive, which is good. How you doing?
I'm still alive as well. I've also been really busy. Of course, with the COVID crisis, a lot of people are reaching out and asking for, support. And it's just I don't have enough slots in the day. I don't have enough time in the day. And like I told you earlier, also there's boxes piled up in my hallway of things I've ordered I don't even have time to open. So it's like it's been pretty hectic in that regard. But it's been a good week, a productive week. But it's a lot going on, and I'm looking forward to slowing down a little bit over the summer, having some time where I can, get away, relax, and kick back a little. That would be, I think that's important, and that would be what I need. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I look forward to that too.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to be talking about what do you have to lose. This is one of my favorite phrases. I actually use this all the time with my clients. I took this from there's a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and I read this book years ago, probably 20 years ago at least. And it's basically a book about this plastic surgeon who worked with a lot of people over the years, and he talked about how, for example, if somebody would come with big nose and they wanted their nose to be reduced, or their ears were too wide or too open and they wanted them to be not as poking out as much, he would always talk to them first and try to see if he could help them psychologically. But one of the things that he noticed a lot of times when he would do surgeries on people is that he would reduce their nose, for example, but then he would find that later the person still felt like their nose was too big, or he would change their ears and he would feel like their ears were still poking out, or that people were still staring at them for this or that. So he found that we have this mental image, right, that we carry with ourselves, and that even if you get the plastic surgery, unless you change your self-image, then you would still feel the same way. And so what he figured out is, what if you change your self-image first without going through the surgery? Would that change the outcome and how you feel about people staring at you? And he found that it does work. Not all the time, but most of the time when people change their self-image, they feel better about things. So anyway, there's a part in the book that talks about what do you have to lose? And so one of the things that he would say is that before you start with anything in life, you really don't have anything. And so if you try, then at least you're going to see if you can get something. But if you don't get it, then at least you tried. But since you didn't have anything at the beginning, then you really don't have anything to lose, right? So you try it and see what happens. And so we're going to be talking about that. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think it's the idea there is that people are often looking for the correct answer, like what's the right answer. And a lot of the time our reality is created by what we're thinking and how we're thinking. And our reality is also created by, there's a website I'm looking at called bigthink.com. I looked at it a little earlier, and it talks about what we call social constructionism, that our imaginary boxes are designed for us. Paradigms are designed for us about the way the world is, the way the world functions, what is considered correct, what's considered appropriate, what's considered doable, basically. And we sort of live inside these paradigms, and our creative thinking, our ability to break through from those creative paradigms, are often already locked and sealed before we even start. So we're kind of looking for a correct answer within that paradigm. And when we look for, self-image, as you said, we're thinking of ourselves in a certain way, and we're thinking of the way we're supposed to be, or that we should be, or that we should look. And, when we go to the surgeon, and we want to have something changed, we're hoping that he's going to change, or she's going to change that something permanently, and take away the thoughts that we have about ourselves. But just like you said, a person who's coming from an internal paradigm, an internal thought process, is going to end up in the same end up thinking something else is wrong. So a lot of the times it's about rethinking how you're thinking about yourself, what you're valuing inside of yourself, and how you feel about yourself and the overall, where you get nurturance from, where you get love from, where you get value from, as opposed to the external. And when that starts to change, you're right. You might look in the mirror and see, well, the surgeon could change that, but even if they didn't, I'd be okay, kind of thing. So, but I like what you said. Like, what do you have to lose? Because if you change something, and if you try to change something and it doesn't work, you're not successful at it. And I think this is something you brought up earlier. You're back to where you started anyway, so you didn't lose anything. You're back to where you started. Yeah. All you've lost is maybe got a little disappointed, but you're only disappointed because of what you're telling yourself, because of your preconceived paradigms of the way things are supposed to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that, I remember, I think we talked about this before, but when I was younger, I remember losing about 100 pounds when I was probably 22, 23. And I remember, having lost all that weight, and my mind sometimes felt like I was still, 100 pounds heavier. And it took me a while to finally come to the, realization that I was not longer, overweight. And I remember, that it was my mind that changed. And when my mind changed, I was able to keep that weight off and feel like I wasn't overweight anymore. And, in some ways, I feel like sometimes we need to change our mind first before the actual physical thing changes. And, in my case, I lost the weight first, and then I had to, or I didn't have to, but I chose to change my mind in order to keep the weight off. Because a lot of times what happens with people who lose weight is over time they tend to gain it back, and sometimes even more than what they had before. And I feel like that's because of the mindset. We have this mindset a lot of times, like you've talked about in the past, wounds that we have from our past that we're trying to cover, or the anxiety that we get that makes us go eat more and things like that. So all these different things, I feel like, are caused by our minds. And so same as, as in the book that I was telling you about with how people felt like their nose was too big, right? And a lot of times that's all things that we've, with the self-image that we've created over the years. And sometimes that's because we're comparing to other people that may have smaller noses, or we may feel like, our nose might be, that's another thing. There are people who had normal noses, but they feel like their noses are gigantic, and it's all in their mind, right? And so part of that is again, it's that self-image that we've created because of our experiences, blah, blah, blah. And the idea is, what if we change our mind? What do we have to lose?
Yeah. Well, what you have to lose oftentimes is the way you're thinking, is your preconceived ideas of yourself. When we think symbolically, I use a lot of metaphor in my work when I talk to people. Metaphors about philosophy and about self and about life. And when you think metaphorically or hypothetically, you sort of have a visual for something, and you realize that truth, or the relative truth, subjective truth, your own truth, is actually symbolic. It could be symbolically represented in your mind. And if it could be symbolically represented, you could morph it any way you want to within your mind. You don't need the surgeon as much as you think you do, or it doesn't mean, and I don't think that you're saying that someone who wants to lose weight shouldn't go ahead and do so if that's what they want to, if that's what their goal is to do. The idea is seeing yourself as that heavy person, or that person with the big nose, or that person with the not clear skin, or whatever it is you're seeing yourself as. It's changing the way that you're thinking about it, thinking of yourself symbolically, asking yourself questions like, who already sees me as beautiful? Who doesn't see that if I had an extra 10 pounds on my body, who doesn't see that? Who looks right past that? How come they look right past that and somebody else would not? Who's right and who's wrong? It's all symbolic, so the way, what you really have to lose, if you think about it, is the way that you're thinking. Is the way that you've preconceived about yourself and about the world and about social expectations. Because if you lose that, then you have much more freedom to choose what you actually want to do with yourself, and then you won't find yourself as frustrated or as blocked You could say to yourself, it's okay if I enjoy myself this week on vacation. I don't have to worry about calories this week. I could pick it up next week. You won't be so oversensitive about everything around you and about everything that you do. So you'll give yourself a lot more. You won't follow the rules as much as these very strict, rigid rules that are set out for you. The way society says, don't eat after 8 p.m. or a nose should only be about this inches long, or these should be your proportions. All these societal rules and paradigms that we think we have to live within. If that's what we have to lose, that's our relationship to that is something to think about.
Yeah. And there's so many people that I know that have ideas for businesses, or they have an idea for a podcast or an idea for a YouTube channel, and they've been thinking about it and ruminating about it. Even myself, it took me years to actually start doing it, because I always imagine, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try that. But what's funny is once you actually start doing it and you try it, there's all these things that come to mind, and sometimes you think you're doing something in a certain way, but then it doesn't come out the way you're thinking. But at the same time, you learn, and every time you try something, I feel like you may not have anything to lose, but a lot of times you gain more than you lose simply by trying. Even if you fail, I feel like it's just another way of seeing things, like, I tried this and it didn't work. Now I know that doesn't work. I mentioned years ago that I went to this bar, and there was a really beautiful woman, and one of my friends said, just go talk to her. And I was like, but what if she doesn't like me? And he's like, well, what if? You don't know that. You have to go try it. And I did. I went and talked to her. And afterwards, she obviously did not like me at the time. But it was freeing to me that, at least I tried. And then once I knew that she wasn't a very nice person, then, even if she was beautiful, it wasn't, something that I liked because she wasn't nice to me. So I was like, okay, now I know she wasn't nice and it didn't work out. But I have so many other stories where I've tried it and it did work, and the person did actually talk back, and they were nicer than I thought they would be. And there's so many stories like that. But at the end of the day, even if it doesn't work out, like I said, you didn't have anything in the first place. So what do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. Right. And at the end, you have the experience. And if you try, 100 times and you fail 100 times with different women, for example, well, it's okay. At least you'll have that experience, and then you'll know that, you have no more fear of talking to people and strangers. But I can almost assure you, and this is from experience, that if you talk to 100 women, at least one of them is going to talk to you back. And me and my brother used to have this rule that, out of 1 out of 10 will actually talk back. So we always try to go and talk to women, and then, this is when I was way younger, and they would, reject us one more time, and we would be counting, okay, that was number 7, so we have two more, and then the third one will actually say something nice to you. So, and it worked, so you really have nothing to lose if you try things. This works with businesses too. If you're trying to get a job, if you try, and you call a place, this is one thing I was sharing with a client real quick. I was telling her that, the idea is, if you're going to talk to, let's say 100 women, like I said, make sure those 100 women are women that you like, that you would actually consider having a relationship with. Well, the same thing with a job. If you're going to apply for a job, make sure that job is something that you would love to have, because I bet you, 1 out of 100 will actually call you back and give you that job. So that's just my philosophy on that.
Yeah, it's a good philosophy, because the truth is that we often fall into like I said, a paradigm of thinking about like moving forward when we have a mental block, or our creative impulses are not there, or we're worried about taking a step forward, like asking somebody out or getting to know somebody, or like you said, speaking to somebody. You might say, what if it doesn't work out? But the question always is, if you flip it, but what if it does? you know.
Yeah.
What if it does? You wouldn't have known that until you did,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times we're following rules. We're following rules of practicality. We're being practical, or we're saying if it's not following the rules of engagement as constructed for me, then I'm not doing it right. And even though there's the thing is when we're looking for a job or we're looking to find our get past our mental block, often what we do is we do the same thing over and over and over again in different ways, and we think it's different to try to get a different result, and we follow the rules that are laid down for us because those are rules that have been invented and sort of done over and over again by so many people, and not necessarily even proven. Some people had success with those rules, but if you think about it historically, how did that rule become a rule? The rule of engagement, or the rule of doing things, arbitrary rules of setting forth and doing something going forward, how to prepare a resume, how to, your opening line to somebody, how to present yourself, what to wear, when and where, with whom, like all these rules that we keep following over and over again. Could it be that we're being so serious about the stringent quality of the rules that we're not actually allowing ourselves to think creatively about how to move forward? What else can I do? What else is here for me? And how do I know this is going to work when it hasn't worked so many other times? So you're right, you have nothing to lose because you'll end up with nothing. But if you think about doing the same thing over and over again, that's not gotten you anywhere either. Your creative impulses could be stifled and you don't even know it because you're being too practical, or you're telling yourself, well, I've got to work hard. I've got to be serious. I've got to, be serious about it, and then really, really, plant myself down and do it. And that might sound good on paper, it might sound good in your mind, but that might be what's actually depleting you. It's okay to put some, say, for example, some playfulness into your work, or some enjoyment. Some people think, for example, a rule would be, if I'm not working hard, I'm not sweating, I'm not working hard enough. Why can't you be enjoying what you're doing? Actually really enjoying, having a joyful experience for what you're doing, and that can be considered hard work. Why does it have to be something that is considered stressful or or difficult? A lot of people have mental blocks because they don't want to confront that. I don't want to spend an afternoon doing something that's stringent and hard and difficult. Does it have to be? Is there a way for you to make it playful? Is there a way for you to make it interesting? Is there a way for you to actually enjoy the process of what you're doing? Do you have to follow the rule that everybody else follows? You have to do it the way everybody else has done it. Has that been working for them? How's that been working out? You got to ask yourself that question. So I think that, like, there's a point that's made on bigthink.com, his point number 7. I kind of got a chuckle at it. If he says, being a serious person is often what people think, you need to do to move forward in life, for example. But you remember that in the old times, Egyptian pharaohs and Chinese emperors and all those historical figures often asked their court jesters for the village fool, for the answers when they were stuck. It was, it's historically known that they would do that. So they're going to the least likely person to have the answer, saying, what do you think? And that person would say something. And who knows, oftentimes major decisions, good or bad, could have been made by what a court jester had said. So, just thinking about the way you're thinking, about the paradigms you're holding yourself inside of in terms of making decisions, making choices, moving forward. All this could be stifling your creative impulses. It could be stifling where you're going and what you're achieving, because you're thinking in a very predestined way of thinking, rules that have been handed down to you. Do you really have to do it that way because that's why everybody does it, or everyone says you're supposed to do it? I'm not saying to do things that are not ethical or not appropriate or illegal or wrong. I'm just simply saying, take a look at the way they say it's to be done, and ask yourself, how do we know? Is there some other way I can get this done? And that'll open up a lot of avenues of thought and of approaches to things that I just, one of those, there's so many pop culture books about, like you talked about, talking to women, or there's so many pop culture books out there about talking to potential dates and what you're supposed to say and how long you're supposed to wait to call them back. And I'm like, I want to hit my head against the wall when I read these things. It's just like, who came up with these rules? And, they're very funny when you watch them on, when you're watching Netflix and you have like a teen comedy or something like that. I think it's very, very witty. But when you actually think inside those paradigms, who came up with this stuff? You know what I mean? And who's proving that this is true? You know what I mean? Within those paradigms, you know, once you get to know somebody, if you really connected with somebody, is it going to matter how many days you waited to call them back? Think about it. Think about it metaphorically. Down the line, does that make any difference? Usually the best stories we hear are the ones that didn't follow the rules, right? The ones that didn't weren't average, the ones that make us go, wow, you know? So it's just to catch how you're thinking and catch where those thoughts are coming from. Where are those rules coming from? And how do you know they're effective? And how, you know, I remember a mentor, a coach once said, how's that working for you? You know, because you've been doing X, Y, Z for a long period of time and you've gotten where you've gotten. And they'd say, well, how's that working for you? Well, it's not. So what makes us keep doing it? You know, following the same platform. You know, if I sent out 100 resumes, I'll send out 1,000. Why? Because, you know, the likelihood increases that the extra 900 are going to see something the first 100 did not. Or maybe there's something else to look at. Maybe there's another approach that you're missing, you know, instead of just saying, I've got to sit down and send out 1,000 resumes. Maybe send out a few and, you know, see what could be different about that entry as opposed to the 1,000 that are just like following those rules, you know, inside that old paradigm. So,
yeah, I guess if you send out that many letters, you have all that money to lose.
Yeah, and the time, right? The time, and you know, the stress, and you know, you wasted all that time. That's what you've got to lose, you know.
Yeah. But at least I guess if you tried, I mean, yes, maybe you'll have the experience at the end of, you know, oh, I just sent 1,000 resumes and none of them got a response. That maybe you need to try, like you said, a different approach, but at least you'll know that doesn't work, you know. I've had so many people who do that, and I've learned recently, I don't know if that's still the case, but since a lot of times people now send their resumes through the internet, that they have, you know, this big corporations have ways to read through the resumes and then come up with the ones that are more you know, eligible for the job. But what they do is they put this hidden messages in the resumes so that they, you know, the algorithm reads them and puts them on the top. But they're, you know, ways to do it, and that's why, you know, if you send 1,000 resumes, I was just thinking about that you may not be called back because, you know, you don't know those little secrets about you know, how to put your resume at the top, and you know, it's so there's all these things that I feel like it's important to keep in mind. But more than anything, don't let anything stop you from trying, you know, because even if those things are there, you know, this is how I found out, because I was, you know, asking some people about it, and some people were, you know, this is back in school when I was trying to get my resume fixed so that I could apply for a job at the university, and they were explaining to me all these things, and that's how I learned, because I went and I tried, and I've never had to apply for a job in my life before, so I didn't know anything about resumes or how that works, and most of the time, you know, I've owned my own business, and so when I was trying to do that, I learned all those things, and I feel like that's how it is. You know, you try. If you want to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a companion, you can just go out and ask somebody on the street, hey, you know, what's your name? And say, hello, my name is blah blah blah, and I'm interested in dating you. And then you probably get like, oh my gosh, you're weird, or some weird response, or they may say, yeah, sure, why not? You know, you don't know that until you try it. And so the idea is, once they tell you that, then you take that information and you think about it, you know, process it, and then you can come up with a new way, a new approach, until you try again, and then you try again, but maybe a little bit different, and then you look at it. So in other words, you know, don't be afraid to fail, and if you fail, then at least you know why you failed, or at least try to think about why you failed, and then try to, you know, do it again with a different approach. Again, you have nothing to lose, because in the first place, you don't have anyone in the first place. So at least you're trying, and if it works, then hey, you might have somebody at the end of the day, right?
That's right. You're gaining experience, if nothing else, right? Like you said, you're gaining the insight as to what works also best for you, because everybody else's approach might not be your best approach, just because that's again another thing about rules, you know, and rules of engagement. Just because it worked, for a significant a number of people, and they standardize that way of approach for whatever it is you're trying to do, that doesn't mean that it works for you. And also keep in mind, historically, who typically standardized most of our approaches? Was it really somebody who came from your background, or somebody who came from your experience, or was it standardized by somebody else? And I think one of the biggest things that helps people back is people don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to do something wrong. I can honestly tell you that if I look back in my life and everything that, I'm not incredibly successful, but what has been successful for me, I'd say about 70 to 80% of it off the top of my head has not been achieved by the methodologies that everybody else was using. It's not that I necessarily did something, I didn't do something that was inappropriate, but I did something that wasn't necessarily the beaten track. It wasn't necessarily what was everyone else was doing. Sometimes, sure. Sometimes, yeah, I would send in a resume and I would get a call. Sometimes I would go on an audition and I would get the part. Sometimes I would have a conversation that was an interview and they would like me, and the next day I would be doing whatever they wanted me to be doing. But sometimes, I think even the way you and I met was very serendipitous. We were just having a conversation over dinner, and then we started, you started telling me about what you did. And then, a lot of the things that have come my way have happened to me have not happened because of some sort of set rule or modus operandi, so to speak, of the way it gets done. A lot of it was just random or serendipitous, or just trying something different, and not being afraid to be wrong. So if somebody, because again, what is wrong? If I did something wrong, who's to tell me that was wrong? That person maybe didn't like it, or wasn't happy with it, but that doesn't mean it was wrong. It doesn't mean that I made an official objective mistake. Putting your best foot forward sometimes means that you're gonna fail in the moment, or you're not gonna get what you want in the moment. You'll be disappointed. Someone else will be disappointed, perhaps. And then what happens? Don't be afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we started this podcast, we didn't have anything, and if out of all the episodes we've made so far, if at least one person has changed their lives, that's a good thing, and if nobody has, then at least you and I have had fun, this whole time. So yeah, it's actually, I think it's a good thing to just try things and see how it goes. I feel like we've had some really good comments from people, so I feel like it's been more than one person that's gotten benefited from this podcast. But at least we're trying and we're doing it, and I feel like this also applies to everything in our lives. If there's something that you've always wanted and you want to try it, then go for it. Try it, even if you fail. And I agree with you, by the way, that everyone is afraid of failure. And nowadays, I think most people are also afraid of getting a bad rating. I was watching a show called Upload on, I think it's Hulu or Amazon Prime, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's called Upload, and it's about, how they can, upload our consciousness into a computer. And then you're living in this computer world, but then you have an angel who's a person who's alive that comes and helps you, if you need anything in the virtual world. But every time they come, you give them a rating. And so this employee is kind of worried that their rating is going to go down, and she's a 4.8. And then, she wants her rating to go up because she wants to be a 5.0. And it's like, it's becoming more of a thing where, and I tell you because, when I do my YouTube channel, I'm also part of a meditation app called Insight Timer. And they rate your meditations and everything you do, and it's like, it feels like they're judging you, and it feels like, if people like the video or they dislike it, it feels bad. It feels like, oh my gosh, they're hurting you because of their ratings. Or my niece, for example, has an Instagram, and if she posts the picture and it doesn't get at least 300 likes, then she removes it. And it's like, my gosh, we're becoming this world where, we want to be rated the highest possible way, but then, we're makes us more afraid of putting stuff out there because, what if, people don't like it? And, sometimes when I do my meditations, I do them for myself, but when I put them out there, it's a scary thought because, other people are going to listen to it. And, you're hoping obviously that people benefit from it, but there are some people that don't like your stuff, and that's okay. But it's so hard to take that rejection sometimes, that if you almost feels like a failure, like you said. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of the times people stop themselves because they have a certain result in mind. They have what we call absolutist thinking. It's all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they don't know what to do. They do know what to do or what they want to try to do, but they want to overthink it to the point where it's got to look a certain way when they've completed it. They don't allow for ambiguity. What's it going to look like when it's finished? I mean, I'm also working on a project, a self-help book project, and I'm going to include a podcast broadcast aside, alongside it, so that I can explain the book a little bit more in depth as people are reading it. And I'm thinking to myself, if I could easily think to myself, well, what's that going to look like? How am I going to promote it? Is it going to do well? Et cetera, et cetera. What does it have to look like when it's finished? I have no idea. And to be honest with you, a couple of years ago when I started this project, it looked on paper entirely different. In my mind, the idea for what I was writing was entirely different, and I'm so glad I waited. And that wasn't a mental block. That was me searching and researching and being creative and creating metaphor for what the project was and allowing it to grow. And now I'm very clear on what I want to do with it. But even if I'd put it out a few years ago, what do I have to lose? Nothing. I would just go back and create a new project, and say I did the first one. Now I've got a second one or a third one or a fourth one. So I'm glad I waited, but it wouldn't have been wrong to do it then either. I just would have had a book from a few years ago that would have been different than what I would write now. So I'd sit down and I'd write this one now and I'd pick it up from where I left off, So a lot of people are trying to do it right. They want to get it perfect. They want to get it, it has to have a certain outcome to it. Very, very black and white thinking. We've talked about black and white thinking before. But if you just allow yourself that ambiguity, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how it's going to turn out. And I don't know that has to matter. Then we all recognize that we do have creativity. We do know what we want to do. We're not as mentally blocked as we say we are. And if we just put our best foot forward and don't be afraid to be wrong and don't have to have a vision of how it has to be before you actually do it, because you'll survive. Even if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you're gonna get through it. There's always another option. Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea is to do it, because at the end of the day, the experience is what's most important. I know today there's so many videos out there. There's so many things. Like when I was going to start my YouTube channel, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many meditations out there. Why even get started, But now that I've started it, I can tell you, it feels good to be able to do the things the way I want them. The meditations that I'm putting out there are the meditations that I feel that are needed, that I haven't found that are, as good or that need to be made a certain way. And at least making them my own, it feels good, and I listen to my own meditations and it actually makes me feel better. And yes, I know there are sometimes, things that are not perfect because I'm not perfect, and that's okay. I'm still learning. It's a process, learning about sound, learning about music. I mean, the whole music thing has been such a headache because, I don't know if you're familiar, but in YouTube, you have certain music that you can use that's free. But, after, 10, 20 videos that you make, then all the best meditation music, you've already used it. So from that point on, you have to start looking for other ways to bring you music because you don't want to repeat the same music in all your videos. And so there's all these things that are coming up. But you know what? I'm loving it. I'm getting, a lot of great feedback from friends and people, and I'm using them with my clients too, which they're, listening to my meditations. And so again, when I first started, I had nothing to lose because I didn't have anything. And now I have a lot more experience. I'm learning a lot about sound editing and positioning your videos on YouTube and things like that. Now, that's just one thing, but there's so many other things that we can work on in life. If you own a business, you can use YouTube for your business. If you want to start a store online, you can use YouTube for that store to advertise yourself. There's so many things you can use with YouTube. And this sounds like a YouTube commercial, but I'm just saying that now the internet has so much to offer that if we want to do anything, we literally have everything in front of us. And again, you have nothing to lose except for that experience. And, just try it and see what happens. So,
yeah. And don't get stuck on what it's supposed to look like, what the result is supposed to look like. A lot of people also don't move forward because they're comparing and contrasting themselves to other people and to what they're doing and how they're doing it. You do you, and you just do you. And do the best you can, and put your best foot forward. Just take that first step. We stop ourselves for so many different reasons, and it's what you have to lose if you don't move forward and don't do anything. Then all you have to lose then is time. Because you're just losing time. And
yeah. But if you try it, I always feel like if you try it, at least. It's not wasted time in some ways, because now that didn't work, or that did work. And the idea is for me, it's the experience. The more experiences you have and the more things you try, the more you can see if it works or it doesn't. I mean, if you think about Lady Gaga, she's tried so many crazy things out there that nobody's dared to try in some ways, and look at her, she's become an icon, and she wasn't liked at the beginning by a lot of people, but now she's starting to become more liked by more people, and she's just becoming more and more international. So it's just the trying of something creative, something different, but again, you were right, like, you are unique. Every person is unique. You have your own take on things, and it's okay to try them. And there's like when I started my YouTube channel, my cousin, who's been doing it for years, he said, out of the 7 billion people on this planet, you're going to find at least a small percentage, at least 1% of those people that might like your stuff. You don't know that until you try it. So and it's easier to connect now with the whole world. So there's more people that can know about you, and you can know about them too, because there's a lot of great stuff out there, and that's the great thing about the internet. We can literally find anything nowadays. So hopefully this podcast helped them. Any last words before we finish, Neil?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, what you have to lose if you don't make any steps is just the idea of time, because you're not going to, if you don't do anything, what you've lost is the opportunity, and that's it, to experience, to grow, and that's it. So if you look at it that way, sitting around and not doing anything, for sure, nothing will happen, right? Except more rumination and more time lost. But if you actually take a step forward, the worst that could happen is what? Nothing. You'll get some experience, you'll learn from it and start again. And that's it. So just ask yourself that basic question. If you're sitting there and sort of stuck saying, well, I got two choices, do something or do nothing. If I do nothing, I'll get nothing, except, more more questions about why I didn't do anything. But if you do something, you'll get something, experience, like you said, you'll find what matches you. And that's one thing I should, want to reiterate again. Just be unique, be you, be true to yourself. Don't look at what everybody else is doing and think, I should do that too. Do what you do. You know what I'm saying? And if you're interested in something else, then obviously pursue it. But there's no right path. Even though there's the internet and the internet is huge, that doesn't mean the internet's the answer for you. You find out what the answer is for you. Because again, don't let new rules replace old rules. Old rules were, this is the way you do it, or this is what you should do. And there's, it's new rules that have more different content now, but it doesn't mean that the context is any different. You try it out and you experience for yourself if that works for you, and be unique for yourself, because then it won't feel like a burden. It'll feel exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Neil. So thank you for everyone for listening. We are here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Remember that we also have a YouTube channel, which you can look up, just MindFit Podcast. You can listen to all the podcasts on there. And everyone who's been listening from the beginning, thank you so much to all those people that are donating to us now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate that. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in your whatever app you're using to listen to this podcast. If you can subscribe, we really appreciate that. If you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, we really appreciate that as well. And I guess we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye, Neil.
All right. See you next week.
This podcast is brought to you by MindFit. Please help us to share this podcast with your friends and family to grow this community. And if you'd like to donate to this podcast, or if you'd like to share your comments, questions, or concerns, send them to mindfitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 714-328-4661.